You one day in a little toy shop, buy a bag of balloons with the money we got, set them free at the break of dawn. So one by one they were gone. Back at base, bugs in the software flash the message, something's out there, floating in the summer sky. 99 red balloons go by. It's red alert, there's something here from somewhere else. The war machine springs to life, opens up one eager eye, focusing it on the sky where 99 red balloons go by. 99 Decision Street, where 99 ministers meet to worry, super scurry, call the troops out in a hurry. This is what we've waited for, this is it boys, this is war. The president is on the line as 99 red balloons go by. Nights of the year, right? Super high-tech jet fighters. Everyone's a superhero. Everyone's a Captain Kirk, with others to identify, to clarify and classify. Scramble in the summer sky as 99 red balloons go by. As 99 red balloons go by. 99 dreams I have had, in every one a red balloon. It's all over and I'm standing pretty in this dust that was a city. If I could find a souvenir just to prove the world was here. And here is a red balloon, I cry for peace and let it go.
If there be but 100 of us remain alive, never shall we under any condition be brought under anybody's idea of a new world order. We fight not for honor, nor for glory, certainly not for riches, but for that one thing which no honest person would give up save with life itself, freedom. Once we were warrior poets, for now we must stand for peace. Alex, how Glenn was there, but he's disappeared. I'm hoping he'll be back at some point.
Yep.
But how are you this afternoon?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
Good. And have we heard from Glenn since he disappeared?
Just popping in now.
There we go.
Right on cue, which is good.
He's just arrived.
There we go.
Perfect timing.
It just kicked me out. Couldn't get back on. Told me I'd no internet. I've got full bars on my.
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me?
I can.
You can hear me?
Yes, yes, we can. There's a little bit of a lag or something on my end, but we'll work with it.
Well, I'm back. So,
it's the usual Sunday afternoon frolics. Welcome to the 77th Brigade and the rest of the alphabet agencies. Hope you enjoyed the show. How are you, Glenn? Anyway,
increasingly frustrated with technology and people who fuck about with it. But apart from that, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine, mate. Yeah.
Good. Well, the good news is we've not yet resumed the war against Iran, and the world's not yet come to an end. But that's about the only good news I have for you today. Let's start with an interesting story close to home. Alex, if you bring up that news story that was in the press this week. It's coming. It's definitely coming.
I've lost Ian. I don't know if you have.
He's still moving a little bit.
Yes, I'm here.
He's there.
There we go. Now we're back.
There he is, moving.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a bit of lagging going on somewhere. But yeah, if you can bring up that the first story, Alex.
Yeah.
This is great, Gene. There we go. There we go. Headline says it all. This was in a tabloid newspaper here in Scotland. Grandad in full Highland dress arrested over bladed weapons at Indie rally. And there you see the bold Frank being arrested by the police. And he was arrested. They literally hackled him, took him to the police station, fingerprinted him, photographed him, charged him with having bladed weapons in public, and it's now gone to the Procurator Fiscal. Put up the next picture, Alex. It used to be the banner on the Last Jacobite page. There we go. There's me, Frank, and my mate John Mellon, dressed in the full regalia as we used to back in the day, leading. I think that was the Independence Parade in, I'm going to say Edinburgh, but it could be Glasgow, doesn't matter. We were always, because of the way we were always shoved up front anyway. And so that used to be the banner on the page, if you remember. Okay, you can take it away, Alex, please. I spoke to Frank. When did I speak to him? I think it was Thursday or Friday. I spoke to him. Hey, it is what it is. But if you go through the comments on the newspaper, you get the variety, you get the unionists, and you get he's waiting for William Wallace, but you get a lot of people being supportive as well. The thing is, as some of the comments said, and as Scots law says, you are entitled to carry swords, daggers, ski and doos as part of the national outfit. Frank and I, we go way back. And indeed, years and years ago, we were both part of a kind of reenactment group where we dress up as famous heroes from Scotland's history, like Robert the Bruce, King Robert the Bruce, the Declaration of Arbroath, William Wallace, James Douglas, or James Douglas, the greatest no one's heard of. Yeah, it's a full gear, full armor, broadswords, axes, everything that you can mention. We were at every gala and parade and with MPs, and they all wanted to have photos taken with us. Now, obviously, the weapons that we had were LARP, live action role play. They weren't. Oh dear, we're definitely having live because I've got excellent internet. Anyway, I was saying the weapons that Frank was carrying, none of them had you couldn't cut a sandwich with them, if I put it that way. Oh dear, oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Oh, it's not very good. Can anyone hear me? Well, in the comments, if you can still hear me, there we go. That was bad. You both went off there for quite a little while. If it persists, then we might have to do something, but we'll just see how it goes, okay? So yeah, I was saying, the weapons that Frank was carrying, you couldn't cut a sandwich with. But he was wearing his deer-handled ski and do. He had his dirk, and he had a broadsword on his back. Now, me personally, the broadsword's wrong for that outfit. It should have been the claymore, which he has as well. But that aside, I think the last time it came up in court, the sheriff threw the case out and gave the police a bollocking. If the PF, the Procurator Fiscal here in Scotland, folks, they decide whether something goes to court. If the PF has got any brains, he's going to throw out the case before it goes to court. Because if it goes to court, it's going to cause one a hell of a stushy. But it's part of a wider attack. And it's an attack which isn't just in Scotland, it's in Ireland, it's in every European country, it's in America, it's in Canada, it's in Australia, it's in New Zealand. It's an attack on the culture of our countries. We're not to have sovereign nationalities. You get what I'm saying, Glenn?
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, it is. And the symbol of that nationality, of that symbol of that national pride, is the national costume and is traditional dress. And if that traditional dress includes bladed weapons, then so be it. As you say, it's those weapons that Frank was carrying, the weapons that you used to carry. They weren't edged weapons. Technically, they were edged weapons, but they didn't have an edge on them. So there were pieces of decorative metal. I find this outrageous, and it is so far over the top that it's, it just demonstrates that attack on national cultures that they seem to want to do away with and homogenize us all into some kind of, I don't know, just a melting pot where nobody can identify as anything. So, well, unless you want to identify as a cat or or a woman or something.
Well, exactly, or a fridge.
Free.
I mean, when you see it in the bigger picture, it's all part of the Agenda 2030. It's all part of creating a one world government and new world order. To do that, you first have to get rid of national identities. Alex, do you see where I'm coming from with it?
Yeah, they kind of attacked any form of nationalism. They kind of got every nationalist party on board at the right at the start of the COVID crap. And they did that for a reason. They did that to get rid of that idea of a national identity. We do need to realise who is doing it, because it's not coming from people coming into the country. It is coming from the top of the country and from our own governments and institutions.
It's Jackie, Nicholas' mum. Yeah, I'm sorry, because Nicholas really upset that.
Well, we have also, of course, our wonderful Prime Minister, never here, queer Keir Starmer. The rent boy saga is going on. They're in court. The jury's been told to disregard any motives. Well, how are you going to judge a case disregarding the motives of the case? I don't know how that works. But they look like they've been beaten and are scared anyway. How Keir Starmer is still in office is beyond anyone's rationale. And of course, now, up front, let's just say, we abhor violence, and we especially hate violence against any nationality, race, creed, or anything else. We are not anti-Semitic, and far from it. But here's the fact. We have approximately, I think it's 40,000 stabbings in the UK per annum. The Jewish population makes up less than 0.05% of the British population. The mentally disturbed individual who stabbed two Jewish men, who both survived, a lot of them don't, like the little girls who were stabbed in Southport, etc. But the mentally disturbed man who stabbed two Jewish men in Golders Green area earlier that day stabbed his best friend, who was a Muslim. But no one talks about the Muslim. No one talks about that guy getting stabbed. But yet the two Jewish guys get stabbed, and we have a crisis of anti-Semitism and Cobra meats, and the agenda is being forced on everyone. Alex, am I wrong? Have you seen this?
No. Yeah, he stabbed three. It's even admitted in things like the BBC articles. It's there in the articles, but it's hidden right down the bottom. The headline becomes two Jewish men stabbed. And then you get, like you say, rise of anti-Semitism. You get, we need to do something about this. And it's every media outlet in the UK is leading with that rise of anti-Semitism. And they won't distinguish, because it doesn't fit the narrative between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. Sorry, I think there's a bit of a lag still, but they just don't distinguish, and they keep the same message.
There's still a lag there. Yeah.
I know she said that.
Glenn, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I thought it stopped moving for a minute. Okay, yeah. I mean, what was this guy's name? Esther Suleiman or Sulmani? Can't remember quite. Exactly right. The fact that in London alone last year there were, I've got the figure here, 16,344 knife crime incidents. 16,000. And here we are, absolutely tearing our hair out, having a hissy fit about two men who were two of three, one of whom was Muslim, as you mentioned, a guy called Ishmael Hussein, who just happened to be in the way of this lunatic. This is being driven, and our press are being driven. Our press are being controlled by Israeli interests. Israel needs to suppress all opposition, not only surrounding it militarily, but by using the governments and press of virtually every Western country. And you can see this is as plain as day, because who did they go for? Who did the press go for? Who politician? I was watching Question Time the other day. I nearly threw I was watching it on the laptop. I nearly threw it across the room, because where did they turn? This is all the fault of the pro-Palestinian marchers, the hate marchers that are full of Hezbollah people wearing headbands, screaming death to Jews. Where did he get that idea? Where the hell? Oh, it's doing my head in, and it's being driven by Israel. Sorry, carry on.
No, you're quite right. I'm getting a lot of lag, Alex. I don't know if you are with Glenn. When we transition, we'll do something, okay? So, right. The chief rabbi was all over X, formerly Twitter, talking about this the rise in anti-Semitism, and how we all had to stand with the Jewish people and the Jewish race. And I replied, and I did so thinking, I wonder if I'm going to get a knock on the door for this. But I replied, and I said, whilst we abhor violence of any kind, perhaps if Israel wasn't raping Palestinian prisoners with dogs, perhaps if Israel wasn't genociding the Palestinian people, destroying the homes in the West Bank, genociding the people of southern Lebanon, destroying Christian churches and cultural centers, attacking nuns in the street, spitting on Christians. Perhaps if some of those things didn't happen, maybe that would help. And of course, the latest one was the act of piracy on the high seas in international waters, hundreds of miles away from Israel, when Israeli forces boarded and took capture an international freedom flotilla that was trying to get to Gaza. They were taken to Crete, where they were beaten, tortured, and abused. So maybe, Alex, if these things weren't happening, is it cause and effect? You tell me. What do you think?
It certainly feels like it to me. And in that statement, in that sentence, they were taken to Crete. This is the problem. If it was just Israel doing these things, you could say something, but it's all of the rest of the Western countries supporting, enabling, and going along with that narrative, and just they don't care. Anything they do is fine, and anything anyone else says, not against the Jewish faith, but against Zionism and against the state of Israel, is immediately anti-Semitic. And it's not. It is cause and effect. You slaughter people, you genocide an entire race, you slaughter babies and children, and you mistreat and rape prisoners, and people will kick back. It's not anti-Semitic, it's anti-Zionist, and it's anti the war crimes of the state of Israel.
Exactly. Yeah. The biggest drivers of anti-Semitism in the entire world are the Zionists. They are the biggest drivers of this. Their actions, what they do, reflect directly on the mostly sort of, well, peaceful expatriate, you might call them, communities, although Israel is not the home of every Jewish person, and many Jews say that they will never go there. But Zionism is driving this because it suits their purpose. It suits their purpose to make everyone believe that the world is out to murder Jews, and they that then become the victims once again, and they can get the laws changed in the countries where this is happening. And you're absolutely right, Alex. It's a sort of backlash. That's what this is. But it also plays into their hands because they are driving this agenda. I'm sorry about disappearing. There was a slight crisis, but I'm okay now.
That's okay. No, our favorite. That's okay. I'm gonna be wearing my invisibility cloak later on as well. I'll just be there. Now, Ben Gabir had his 50th birthday. Happy birthday, Mr. Gabir. His wife made him a birthday cake, or had a birthday cake made for him. Don't think she did it with her own hands. Now, curious to get it showed a picture of Greater Israel on it. It had his wonderful fasog on it, and it was topped with a golden hangman's noose. Because Ben Gabir was the very fellow that brought in that law that says that Palestinians accused of, well, anything, just, for the sake of it, can be hanged. Make gas chambers great again, Mr. Gabir.
There's no words for it, is it, really? People keep coming back with all the Zionist propaganda saying this didn't happen, that didn't happen, this isn't real, but they never hit it. They boast about it, they brag about it, they celebrate you on a fucking birthday cake. There's no words.
Glenn.
Yeah, look.
Have you had a birthday cake like that before?
Not exactly like that, no. I am considering getting a dartboard, and I could put certain pictures up on it, but then again, I'd have to change the picture all the time. And the one with Gavir would have worn out long ago. It'd be full of holes. But look, people used to say, "Oh, how did the Nazis get away with everything they did?" Oh, well, we never knew. We never knew what was going on. People just didn't know. Well, we fucking well know what they're doing. We know what the Zionists are doing because, just like Alex said, they rub it in your face. They're proud of it. They dance around with bottles of champagne, pink champagne, a bit limp-wristed pink champagne, but c'est la vie. They dance around with bottles of pink champagne, celebrating this mighty legal victory of being able to sentence every single Palestinian that they wish to death. This is the culture of Zionism. This is the evil that stalks our world, and this is the fucking evil that our governments are trying to stop you and I and everyone else from talking about, from criticizing. I couldn't be any more fucking frustrated, honestly. Carry on, Ian. Sorry.
It's, as you say, Glenn, it is unbelievable. And it's stayed in your face. It stayed in your face the way that Nazis are in your face in Ukraine. It stayed in your face the way that Trump is being a pirate, blockaded. What, it's all about China. First, the whole Greenland thing was about blocking China's access to the Arctic. Venezuela, blocking China's access to Venezuelan oil and their influence in South America. Now we've got the Straits of Hormuz. It's all part of one big plan. Alex, I sent you a little message on our chat. So it's all part of one agenda, and the agenda isn't great. Alex is going to go out and come back in, and we'll see if that solves some of the problems, Glenn. And if that doesn't, I'll go out and come back, and we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
Anything else that's caught your attention this week, Glenn, before we transition?
Yeah, much like yourself, I'm very surprised you're so, because you do pay a lot of attention. Alex is coming back. We've got the ongoing trial, the Rent Boy trial, which again is looking like it's going to turn into another farce, another whitewash, where the real motivation for what these men did will be brushed under the carpet, and they're already. Well, they brought in this strange guy called what was his name, El Monet, and they seem to be trying to swing that round to. It was the Russian. The Russians did it. Of course, it's always the fucking Russians, isn't it? My God.
Yes. They really do. Pardon me. They really do think we are dumber than
brain dead.
A block of wheat. They really do. The problem is, now, one of my favorite comments at the start of the show, you know how I put the hellos up on the screen as the show started? One of my favorite ones was someone who said, hello from the disunited states of, how did they put it? Stupidity. It's the problem is a lot of the public actually buy the shit. And, at this point, I'm not sure what it would take to wake up some people. Because it is blatant and it's in your face and they don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Is there anything from this week, Alex? Because I think we've kind of solved part of the problem there now. Is there anything that's caught your eye from this week, Alex?
Um, I don't know anything specific. I've been seeing like what we've talked about already, the way the propaganda's been waged after Gold is Green, but in the actual wider events, it's almost like everything's in kind of a holding pattern at the moment. It's like back to a will he, won't he on going any further with Iran, or what are we getting to? Where are we going? Because it's almost like there's a continual low-level rebellion from the whole military on that side. It's like nobody's going to go with what he wants, and it's like, no, we're briefing you now, not you briefing us. So I kind of haven't seen anything massive.
No, exactly so. Well, you're right. You're absolutely right. There is no doubt in my mind that Trump and Netanyahu want to go back to the attack with Iran.
Yeah.
No doubt in my mind. However, Putin's call to Trump and using some of the strongest diplomatic language I've ever heard from Putin ever, basically telling Trump that if Iran is attacked again, it will be unacceptable to both Russia and China. It doesn't get much more in your face than that. The fact that his generals and his admirals are telling him there is no military solution here. Trump's blockade of Iran's blockade isn't working because the US military cannot come anywhere near Iran because Iran will blow them out of the fucking war. The tankers that Iran is letting through are sticking close to the Iranian coastline until they hit the Indian Ocean and then they're dispersing. So the blockade isn't working. And you're right, it's like we're in a holding pattern. Couple of things and then we're going to transition. They say, don't they? We get it all the time in the comments. It's a distraction, it's all a distraction, we're being distracted. But no one ever says what we're being distracted from. I'll tell you. Meteorite activity is through the roof. The Earth's wobble is getting worse. They're having to come up with ridiculous names because we're sometimes getting 2 and 3 full moons a month. That's not how it works. Worse than that, it's worse than that. He's dead, Jim, dead, Jim, dead, Jim. And worse than that, the sun looks like it's about to start blasting off Earth directed CMEs again. But here's something that I think everybody, if you've got a pen, write this term down and look it up. It's called Canfield Ocean. Canfield Ocean. Just the sound, Canfield Ocean. It describes oceans that are dead. Go and look up for yourselves the term, what it means. Our ocean, because it is one big ocean, it's all connected, is dying. Our ozone is dying. The continued blockade of Hormuz isn't just an energy shock. That's phase one. There's going to be 7 phases. Phase two was a shortage in avgas. There's companies, airlines going broke right now. There's companies going broke. Brewers Fayre gone broke. Thousands of jobs. The entire catering and bar industry it's gone. Trying to keep a pub open nowadays is hard fucking work. We are about to see famine the way we've never seen it before. Georgia Guidestones, we are going to lose billions in this coming year. And I don't mean billions of pounds, I mean billions of people. And lo, a third of the oceans were destroyed. Sounds familiar, sounds like what we're going to be talking about when we transition. But before we do, Alex, Glenn, the rise of AI, the fact that energy's through the roof, the fact that there's job layoffs left, right, and centre. Why can't people see this in front of their face? Glenn?
Yeah, it's normalization bias. It's normalization. People are very good at normalizing things, as if, I don't know, petrol's $1.59 a litre or whatever it is now. I haven't filled up for a while. It'll all be fine. It'll all be fine. Everything's always going to be fine. Yeah. There have been warnings of food shortages. There have been warnings that travel is going to be restricted on airlines. No, it'll be fine. I'm still going to get my 2 weeks in Benidorm or whatever other hellhole you want to go to. It's all going to be fine. And that is how most people play it. But even further than that, some people don't even pay attention. They don't even know about any of this. They don't really care. The only time that some people will notice is if it hits them in the face. And then by then it's too late. And all the, you were told, you were warned, means nothing. So I think that's where we are. I think that's where we've been for a long time.
Alex?
I feel like there's 2 reasons in a way. One is the game they play, because they don't care if you believe everything they tell you about climate change, and you believe it's all CO2, and you believe you can solve it by never going out your house or never buying any new clothes or eating vegetables and never touching any meat. They're happy. But they're also happy if you believe it doesn't exist, if you believe it's all a lie. They don't care, because at the same time, you're still not looking at the truth. Yeah. So they don't mind either way. But the other flip side of it is, if people admit they can see these things, if people admit to what they can see, with that comes the responsibility to do something about it. People don't want to acknowledge, because acknowledge means acting, and they don't want to act.
Yeah. Just don't look up.
Yeah.
Don't look up. Indeed. Well, let's transition. Stay with us, folks. Play the song, Alex. It's time for the lone gunman to ride again.
See him wasted in the saddle. He comes riding through your town. He's wearing yesterday's misfortunes like a smile. Once he had a future full of money, love, and dreams, but he spent like it was going out of style. But he just keeps on believing that for better or for worse, he's searching for a shrine he's never found. Never knowing if believing is a blessing or a curse, or if going up is worth coming down. He's a poet and a picker, he's a prophet and a pusher, he's a pilgrim and a preacher, and a problem when he's stoned. He's this walking contradiction, partly truth and partly fiction. He's taken every wrong direction on a lonely road back home. He has tasted good and evil in the bedrooms and the bars. He's traded in tomorrows for today. He's running from his demons and he's reaching for the stars, leaving everything he's loved along the way. And the world just keeps on turning, so for better or for worse, all he ever gets is older and around. From the rocking of his cradle to the rolling of the hearse, going up's not worth coming down. But he's a poet and a picker, he's a prophet and a pusher, he's a pilgrim and a preacher, and a problem when he's stoned. He's this walking contradiction, partly truth, he's partly fiction. He's taken every wrong direction on a lonely road back home.
Welcome, pilgrims. We know you're weary from traversing a world which has truly gone insane. The internet is a morass of misinformation, disinformation, AI bots, AI fakes, shyster, schuster, snake oil salesman, buy me a coffee, be my Patreon, all the rest of it. Somehow, some way, you found your way here this afternoon where none of that malarkey is going to happen. So pour yourself a drink, make it an adult beverage and make it strong. Roll yourself something warm and brown and golden to get you through this day, because this afternoon, the lone gunman, he's going to ride again. I've got a weapon of mass destruction in my hands. Here it is here. I can tell you a little bit about this particular weapon of mass destruction before long. But before I start, let me say, this afternoon may start as if it's a sermon or a Bible study, but by the end, I fully intend, as normal, to pickle brain cells 6 ways from Sunday. So, with that, Alex Glenn, are we ready? This
Ready as we'll ever be.
was given to me in 1993 by a very good friend of mine. Here he is. Really Hind. Now, Really was a Dutch man who lived in Hawaii and who was a very good and close mentor of mine up until his death. He had a very interesting life story. His parents, or his father, was a Dutch diplomat in the Dutch East Indies, as it was called, Indonesia, when the Japanese invaded in 1940. His father was killed by the Japanese. Rayleigh himself was taken into captivity and spent the war in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. It was in that prisoner of war camp that he met a soldier who was also a Christian, and in his darkest times, he was crying one night. The soldier looked and said, "Look up. Can you see those stars? If God could place those stars in the heavens, his hand is big enough to reach down to you." And really gave me some insight into this weapon of mass destruction that set me on my journey to getting my theological degrees and to becoming a minister. So we're going to be looking 40,000 view again, because that's all I can do. But we're going to be looking this afternoon at that book called The Revelation. Why? Because it is my firm opinion that someone out there, and I think I know who, but someone out there, Alice, who the fuck is Alice, is manipulating events to make it appear as if we're in the biblical end times. In the same way that there's an ongoing agenda about disclosure. That's why this show is called The Octopus in the Revelation. So, let's start. I feel like I'm back in church. Although I normally I would tell a joke before I started the sermon. But let's start in Genesis. Because, as I said last time we tackled the Revelation, you ain't going to understand anything unless you can understand that the Revelation refers to everything else in the Bible. Here I'm going to try and give you a fairly big insight. There are not one, but two creation stories in the book of Genesis. Genesis chapter 1. Both of those are borrowed from much older texts. Things like the Sumerian cruciform text, the Sanskrit text. They borrow from each other. The first creation is about the creation of the universe. The second creation story is about the creation of mankind. And that covers Genesis 1 and 2. And Genesis 3 is about the fall of man. And we could go on a whole thing about reptilians from this. But let's not. Let's go to Genesis 4. Genesis 4 is the story of Cain and Abel. Adam lay with his wife Eve. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She called him Cain. She said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Abel kept flocks. Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, both Cain and Abel brought to the Lord the fruits of their labor. And on Abel's offering, the Lord looked with favor, but on Cain's, the Lord did not. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not also be accepted? Sin is crouching at your door." Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out into the field." And there in the field, Cain attacked and killed his brother. Ever heard that story before, Alex?
I have, and I've never quite understood it because I always got bothered by the fact that why did he choose to accept Abel's and not Cain's?
That's the question. Glenn, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is like a Sunday school story, which, you know, we all learned, but that exactly is a very good question. I can't remember if it was something to do with the quality of the offering, something about having too much fat or something like that. I can't remember, but there was. I'm sure God did give a reason why the sacrifice was not acceptable, but you will know better because it's all a bit blurry.
Well, it's a question that bothered me, and it bothered me for years. Why was Abel accepted but Cain rejected?
Mm.
Because actually, both of their offerings, if you get into the minutiae, they were both perfectly acceptable according to Deuteronomy, according to Jewish Talmudic law.
Right.
It's about the attitude in which they're given. So here's the first and biggest insight. Abel represents faith. Okay? Cain represents religion, i.e., man's attempt to impose his will on God's order. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that becomes one of the primary themes that you'll find throughout the Bible. So you have the story of Abraham and Lot. Abraham takes his flocks and they increase. Lot ends up in Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah. You have Isaac and Jacob. Jacob, the most twisted character in the Bible, but he becomes Israel. Isaac sells his birthright for pottage. You have the prophets and the false prophets. And the prophets, most of them end up in a bad way. You have eventually you have Jesus and the Pharisees and Sadducees.
Yeah.
You get it? Or is it starting to make a bit of sense?
Yeah. It's about surrendering to the will of God rather than your own will, rather than
Well,
sort of that's.
but more than that, it's about more than that. So it's about man attempting to put his God in a box, if you like.
Yeah.
And the manipulations that we're seeing in the world at the moment is exactly that. It's about the entities attempting to manipulate world events to put God into a box that they're happy. So when we get to the book of Revelation, we're going to encounter from the get-go that there are, I'm deliberately hiding my weapon of mass destruction so you don't see all my note takings and scribblings and margins and things. Once you get past the author, who claims to be John the Apostle, once you get past his description of heaven and the Son of Man, you get from chapter 2 onwards the first of a series of rhyming couplets. So you get 7 letters to 7 churches. Now, throughout the Revelation, and again, I'll say again, anybody, anytime, if they say the word Revelations, switch off, shut up, they know nothing. Nothing. It is the revelation of our Lord Jesus Christ. That's the name of the book. So we're going to encounter it throughout the rest of the book if you're trying to read it, if you're trying to make sense of it. Now, Karl Barth was a very famous theologian, German theologian during Nazi times, said that you should read the Bible in one hand, oh, and Glenn's gone again, and the newspaper in the other. Now, hopefully, Glenn comes back because I'm wanting him to do his bit.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he will, but let's go on. And hopefully, he can at least hear. Now, in the book of Revelation, you have 7 letters to 7 churches. You have 7 bowl judgments. You have 7 trumpets. You have 7 scrolls. You see what I'm saying, Alex?
Yeah.
And in each of them, what you have is you get the first 6, then you get a pause, then you get the 7th, and the 7th gets you into the next part. So it's very highly edited, if you like, so that after the 7 letters to the 7 churches, we get into the scroll of the Lamb, and that gets us into 7 seals. Here's Glenn back again. Don't worry, Glenn, don't worry. I'm just saying, with the Revelation, we have a series of 7s and 3s. So you have the 7 letters to 7 churches. You have the 7 seals. You have the 7 bowls and the 7 trumpets. And with each of these, you get 6, a pause, then the 7th, and that leads you into. So the letters lead into the seals, lead into the bowls, lead into the trumpets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's all very highly edited to that end. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they are attempting to interpret the book of the Revelation is to pin their hat or their flag to one mast. So they think either one thing is right or the other, and because of that thing about logic that I spoke about last time when I was looking at Revelation, we think it's got to be one or the other because that's logical. It can't be, it's either, the answer is either 5 or it's 3. It can't be both. Math says that that's illogical, and yet with the Revelation, it's not. So with the 7 letters to the 7 churches today, what I'm going to show you, hopefully, is that there's at least 3 classical interpretations of these 7 letters, and all of them are right at the same time. And that's what pickles people's heads. In the same way that I can see world events and put them into a bio tapestry of understanding, that's how you have to look sometimes at this weapon of mass destruction, which has killed more people down through the ages than any bomb or bullet. So, 7 letters to 7 churches. Every one of them follows a pattern. These are meant to be letters that Jesus dictates to John. That's a dictation. And John writes it down sends it off to the church. But in the way that things happened in the ancient world, these 7 letters follow Pauline's journey of apostolization, and each of the letters was read by each of the churches. Every letter, Jesus says to start with the things that he likes about the church. Then he says the things that he doesn't like about the church. Then he exhorts them to change. And then there's a blessing. There's 2 exceptions. The first church, the church of Ephesus, he's got nothing bad to say about. And the last church, the church of Laodicea, he ain't got nothing good to say about. So let's kick off. Well, not quite. So with each of these churches, when you read the letter, there are things in your own personal life that you can look at in your journey of faith or whatever, that you can apply to your own life. So there's a personal interpretation. There's also, however, a universal interpretation. In other words, it's meant to be applied to the church, Catholic or universal. And then there's also a historical interpretation, because the things that are talked about really were happening in those churches at that time in history. You got me? So there, off the top of my head, I've given you 3 things that are almost diametrically opposite, but yet all 3 of them are true all at once at the same time. Now, I'm hoping you're following along thus far. So with that, Glenn, over to you, and we'll see what you came up with, and I'll take some notes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, the kind of angle that I've gone for is you just happened to mention it there. It's the physical reality of the churches, and where were they? What were they about? What was going on? And so, when we read Revelation 1, verse 11, as you said, John is told to write on a scroll. Some Bibles say write in a book, to the 7 churches, which are in Asia Minor. And Jesus then names the churches. Slide 1, please, Alex. So he names the churches to which John has to write. And these were, as Ian has just mentioned, Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. Now, John was on Patmos at the time. And this is where there's a little bit of scholarly disagreement, either between 95 to 96 AD or 64 to 68 AD, depending on which kind of source you look up. So it's safe to assume that all of the 7 churches were also existing during this kind of window between 64 and 96 AD. But just where were each of these early Christian churches located? It's easy just to say, Thyatira. But where was Thyatira? Because I don't know many people today who could point to its location on a map. So let's have a look at where these churches were. And let's go through them in the order, starting with the first one that Jesus names, and that's Ephesus. Now, I personally know Ephesus existed because I've actually been there. Let's put slide 2 up. There we go. That's part of Ephesus, which is quite a large site. Now, Ephesus was originally a Greek city located in what is now modern-day Turkey. Let's look at slide 3. There it is. There's Ephesus there. Okay. But by the time of John, it was a Roman city. It was once on the coast, but by the 1st century, silting up had forced the Romans to maintain a channel to the sea in order to maintain a port. Now, St. Paul was in the city around 57 AD, and Acts describe a protest against his teachings in the amphitheatre, which is still there because I've sat in it. It's a very large Roman amphitheatre. Now, Paul was largely responsible, as Ian just said, for the Christian church. Well, he was responsible for the Christian church in Ephesus, and Paul appointed a man called Timothy to oversee the church. Now, prior to its Christianization, Ephesus was dedicated to the Roman god. The city was dedicated to the Roman god Artemis. And the city of Ephesus was famous for the export of gold and silver statues of Artemis. It was the artisans who were creating these statues that actually demonstrated against Paul. Because he was ruining their trade, but basically. Now, part of the church which was dedicated to St. Mary still actually stands in Ephesus, and we can see this at slide 4. But this is not the original church. This was not built until the 3rd century AD. So that's Ephesus, which we know was a Christian church at the time of John. So let's look at Smyrna. Now, like all of the churches named in Revelation, the church of Smyrna was in Asia Minor, as I said, modern-day Turkey. Now, today, that ancient city is surrounded by the modern city of Izmir. And we can see it at slide 5, please, Alex. There we go. And you can see how it sits it's been sort of surrounded by this city. Yet again, it was once a Greek city that was taken over by the Romans. And Smyrna was one of the most illustrious of all the Hellenistic Greek era cities. In ancient times, its main export was myrrh, that one of the gifts of Jesus, an aromatic spice. A Christian church existed in Smyrna since the very earliest days of Christianity. And Smyrna was destroyed in 178 AD by an earthquake, but it was rebuilt by the Romans in the 2nd century AD. Now, little actually remains. Well, there is no remnants of the church John actually wrote to in Smyrna. And the Christians in Smyrna faced severe persecution. And some Christians were actually martyred. They were killed for refusing to worship the Roman emperor as a god. Now, some 50 miles from Smyrna lies the city of Pergamos. In Greek times, it was the location of a great library founded by the historian Plutarch. And later, it was the birthplace of the Roman physician and philosopher Galen. The city and its library was so highly regarded that upon his marriage to Cleopatra, Mark Antony gifted the city and its library to her. Pergamos was also famous for its production of calfskin writing material, which we call vellum. It was famous for that, and kind of fitting in with being a library town, you might say. Now, in the 2nd century AD, a great altar was constructed in Pergamos. Let's look at slide 6, please, Alex. This is actually a model of it. And this great altar was dedicated to Zeus. And this is the altar that scholars believe is referenced in Revelation 2, verse 13, when God says, where Satan's throne is. So he's referring to Satan's throne as this altar. Now, close to Pergamos lies Thyatira. It's actually the smallest city of the 7 mentioned in Revelations. But John's letter to the church in Thyatira is the longest. Paul also mentions Thyatira in Acts 16, verse 14. And it is where he converts some of the first people in Asia Minor, outside Philippi. Specifically, a woman named Lydia, who resided in Thyatira. Slide 7, please, Alex. Now, it's not known if Lydia helped to found the church in Thyatira, but she was an important figure in that church. Lydia is said to have been a seller of purple fabric, and textiles seem to be a speciality of this city around the time of that Revelation was penned. It had become an important commercial center. So Christ actually chastises the church of Thyatira for tolerating the teachings of a false prophet called Jezebel, who promoted sexually immoral behavior and who the church was eating meat sacrificed to idols. So that's part of the sort of chastisement that Jesus gives to Thyatira. Now, Sardis, the next church, is a little bit of an anomaly because there is no trace in Sardis of what could be called a physical church from the 1st century. No remains have been discovered. In fact, no churches of any kind were discovered until around 1910, when the Turkish government, the Ottoman Empire, basically allowed archaeological excavations to begin. Slide 8, please, Alex. Now, what they discovered were several churches, and this structure, this is actually what's called a mortuary chapel. And all of these structures sit outside the main city of Sardis, and all seem to date from around about the 4th century. But what this proves is that Sardis, by the 4th century, had really become a hub for Christian worship. In fact, one of these structures, which is known as the Basilica, is thought to be the largest Christian structure of its time, predating the Church of St. John the Studious in Constantinople by almost a century, when that church became the largest. Now, Sardis itself was one of the oldest cities in Asia Minor, and it was founded around 1200 BC, and it was actually once the capital of the Lydian kingdom, until it was conquered by the Persian Empire in 359 BC. It was actually repeatedly conquered, like all of Asia Minor, and it came under Roman rule in 133 BC. Now, it was totally destroyed by an earthquake in 17 AD, but like all the other cities, the Romans rebuilt it. But by the time of John's letter, the city was in decline, apparently. Now, likewise, Jesus judges the church in Sardis as spiritually dead. I know your deeds, he says, that you have a name, that you are alive, and yet you are dead, says Jesus. And he says that at Revelation 3, verse 1. Moving on to the church of Philadelphia. The church at Philadelphia, on the other hand, is praised by Jesus. Philadelphia lies about 28 miles from Sardis in an area noted for its agricultural products. But like most of the cities, it was repeatedly destroyed and repeatedly rebuilt because of earthquakes. The name Philadelphia means brotherly love in Greek. Slide 9, please, Alex. And likewise, Jesus praises this church for its faithfulness, despite not being of great size. So what have we got here? The adjacent plain was famous for wine. Thus, Philadelphia chief pagan cult was the worship of Dionysus, the Greek god of vine and wine, worshipped in drunken orgies. Called Little Athens because of its numerous temples and festivals to pagan deities. If a man had served the city well, a column in one of the pagan temples would be dedicated to him. So that was kind of like the pre-Christian era. Okay. Now, at Revelations 3, verse 9, Jesus says, "Behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow down before your feet, and they will learn that I have loved you." So that was great praise for Philadelphia. And finally, we come to the last church, that of Laodicea. Laodicea. Yeah, terrible pronunciations. Now, this city was founded by King Antiochus II around 2,300 years ago, and so it was a relatively new city during the time of John. It's actually named for the king's reputedly beautiful wife, Laodice, but King Antiochus later agreed to divorce her in order to save the city from the Ptolemaic kingdom when it invaded. And he agreed to marry the daughter of King Ptolemy II. Now, like many of these cities, it was destroyed by earthquakes, but rebuilt by the Romans, finally being destroyed and abandoned in the 7th century, where its ruins lay mostly covered until archaeological excavations began in the 19th century. Slide 10, please, Alex. However, to this day, only around 13% of this once thriving city has been uncovered. In Revelation, Laodicea is criticized for being lukewarm, neither hot nor cold. And this is also referenced by Paul in Colossians 4, verse 4, 13 to 16, where he talks about his concern for this church. So what have we learned? Well, all of the early churches in Asia Minor, and this is a picture of all of them together, slide 11. Please, Alex. There they are. They all represent the fruits of Paul's evangelism. The 7 churches all lie in an area where Paul preached and converted people to Christianity. But the early church was full of difficulties. There was backsliding, and there were practices that went outside of Paul's teachings. We can see here, slide 12. We can see here the essence of what John's vision and the letters he wrote were all about. In order to correct their ways and kind of set them back on the narrow path. 6 out of the 7 had strayed in one way or another and needed to change. And what has to be borne in mind is that John himself was writing this where his vision was taking place from the Isle of Patmos, where he himself was living in exile because of Roman persecution. The letters to the 7 churches can be viewed almost as a kind of stock taking of the early church. And that was a church that was clinging on in many ways, and a church that was in danger of fragmenting and losing its cohesion around the message of Jesus that was interpreted by Paul. Now, there hasn't been time, obviously, for me to go through all of the letters, but this slide gives the essence of the messages that Jesus wanted John to bring to these early Christians. So that was a look at the reality of these churches, the fact that they did exist, and the fact that some of them were not exactly following along in the line that Paul wanted them to go, and the inheritance that was to come thereafter. So that was kind of what I focused on this week.
Brilliant, Glenn. And I gave you that topic because I knew, Man in Black style, that you would pull it out in exactly that way. I keep saying you'll find 3s and 7s everywhere in the book of Revelation. So the setup to the 7 layers comes in chapter 1, verse 19. Write therefore what you have seen, what is now, and what will take place later. In the Greek, meta tauta. I'm not going to disagree with almost anything that you said, because there is always a personal part of biblical interpretation. But I think, hopefully, what I started with, you can start to see how when the church starts to go wrong, it's because they begin to overlay religion onto faith. They attempt to put God into the box that they can understand. That makes sense, Glenn?
Absolutely, yeah.
So now we move on to, and the personal interpretation that you can take from any of these letters, read them for yourselves. If it speaks to you, it speaks to you in some way. But they were all historical churches. They were very famous for certain things, like the purple cloth, like the eye ointment of Laodicea. Laodicea is actually where we get the medical standard for the staff with the intertwined snakes. So now we go on to a historical perspective, because these 7 letters weren't just real churches at the time. but they can also, in some ways, be seen as ages of the church. Now, there's no right or wrong, and Alex was a little bit worried, but I asked her to look at the 7 ages of the church. Let folks know what you find, Alex.
Okay. So, as Ian said, I was looking at the 7 ages of the church, and yeah, I was a little concerned because I'm seeing contradictory things. But I think in many ways that's almost just been explained by the whole idea of trying to put the church into that box of religion as opposed to faith. Because my original plan was to put a word of caution at this stage and say that, or consider it maybe almost a confession, because my Christian background is a bit of a mixture between my mum's full gospel Pentecostal upbringing and the Evangelical Church of England that they attended when I was born. Now, series Anglican for anybody outside of the UK. So when we were taught the letters to the 7 churches, it was just taught purely as 7 literal letters to 7 literal churches. And the most they drew out of that was the idea that we could take this information related to our own lives and avoid making the same mistakes, that sort of attitude. There was always a bit of the old kind of standing joke of the Sunday school teacher that concluded, aren't we glad we're not like those Pharisees, to the children? But it was that idea that it was only a literal letter, and to take it as background for personal growth. Now, the point I'm making in this is all at some level new to me in the sense of ages. So I wasn't confident that I can pick out a definitive interpretation, because there are differences. Because the first thing you become aware of when you start looking at it, that there are, perhaps unsurprisingly in many ways, as many different versions as there are main denominations. So let's start in a way, because we've got to start somewhere. So let's start with the Orthodox, or what's closest to the Orthodox interpretation. So now traditionally there are slight differences even within that scenario from source to source, and the errors from the Orthodox point of view are not always seen as rigid dates, but in general these are the 7 ages you come up with from Orthodox belief. You have the Church of Ephesus, which is considered the Apostolic Church, or sometimes as the Apostolic Age. Now it stretches from Pentecost to the late 1st century, and it tends to be characterized by the apostles and by the foundation of the early church. That leads into the Church of Smyrna, and we're going to find as many pronunciations of these places as there are of Magi and Magi and whatever as well, so I apologize if I'm wrong on any of them. But this Church of Smyrna...
Let me just say, and it was the same for Glenn. The way you pronounce these things doesn't actually matter. As a minister, I was taught, and so I'll tell you, what you do is you just pronounce it the way you think it should be pronounced, and you do it boldly in a way that makes it seem like you cannot be contradicted. So it's Smyrna, it's Laodicea. So don't worry about your pronunciation, because there's no one out there can contradict. Go on, Alex.
Fair enough. As I say, that takes us on to the second of the ages, the Church of Smyrna, which is classed as the Church of Persecutions, or the Age of the Martyrs. And this, from, say, the Orthodox idea, goes from the early 2nd century to the Edict of Milan in AD 313. And it's characterized as a time of persecution under the Roman Empire. Which leads us to the Church of Pergamon. Now, the Church of the Councils, or the Age of the Councils, and that stretched from early 4th century to the 7th century, and roughly ended with the Council of Trulio in 692 AD. Now, the period was marked by the 7 ecumenical councils defining doctrine against heresy. Lead us on to the 4th one, the Church of Thyatira, the medieval church, or the age of monasticism, or Byzantium. Now, from the 7th century to the fall of Constantinople. This is considered in 1453. Now, this is at the time of the Great Schism, and it's considered a period of strong Byzantine influence and of monastic expansion. And we have the Church of Sardis, the Church of Secularism, or the Age of Reformation or Darkness. And this is where we start to see the difference between the denominations. It stretches from the 15th century to the 18th, and it's considered in the Orthodox belief as a period of struggle, sometimes associated with the rise of Western movements and of facing the errors of the Enlightenment. The 6th one, the Church of Philadelphia, Modern Era, or the Age of Mission, stretches from the 18th century to the early 20th and characterized by the missionary expansion of Orthodoxy into Russia and to North America. And taking us finally to the Church of Laodicea, the latter days, or the last age, or the end times. From the 20th century to the present, and this is often interpreted as an age of lukewarm faith or of apathy, and leading on to the final trials of the church. Now, such is generally the understanding of the 7 ages from an Orthodox standpoint. As I say, they do see different versions of this depending on the denomination. And this isn't the most common one you find when you first start looking up the subject. What you keep coming across, the interpretation and the name that you keep coming across most frequently is William Barnum. Now, he also interprets the 7 ages of the church, but he goes one step further, because when they talk about candlesticks and stars, when you talk about to the angel of the church in Ephesus, I write, he interprets the angels as messengers, and he interprets for each age a single messenger or a single prophet or a single preacher almost that he considers as the messenger to each age of the church. Now, for him, he puts the age of Ephesus between AD 53 and 170. And he considers the messenger to the age of Ephesus as the Apostle Paul. Yeah. The age of Smyrna he puts from AD 170 to 312, and he puts the messenger as Irenaeus. Now, I did have a bit more information on that, actually, that I never got in. Was basically Saint Irenaeus of Lyons, and he was recognized for defending the faith during the early period of Roman persecution. He sees the age of Pergamon as AD 3112 to 606, and he sees the messenger to that age as St. Martin of Tours. And he considers this as the church entering a period of compromise. Well, this kind of lines up with the whole idea of the church and state at some level becoming one in the area of Constantine. He then sees the age of Thyatira from AD 606 to 1520. It's a slightly different time period again to what tends to be the Orthodox version. And he sees the messenger to Thyatira as Columba of Iona. And he sees this as representing the church in the Dark Ages. The age of Sardis, he sees between 1520 to 1750, and sees the messenger to Sardis as Martin Luther, which obviously recognizes being one of the main drivers of the Reformation. And this is where you see this difference between the Orthodox view and the, well, I guess, Protestant view in many ways. Then we have the Age of Philadelphia from 1750 to 1906, and he sees the messenger to Philadelphia as John Wesley. Now, this is identified this era for the missionary movement and for the move in that direction. Age of Laodicea, he sees between 1906 to what he defines as from 1906 to the rapture. And with a lot of modesty, he considers himself the messenger to the age of Laodicea. Now, this is, like I say, it's in some ways a Protestant interpretation, but it's also this one guy's interpretation. And there are people that pull it apart. There are people that disagree. And there's people that say he got all of his information and effectively plagiarized it all from Clarence Larkin, who wrote a book back in 1919. But you've got two different interpretations, but you have roughly the same errors, and it kind of goes back way before, in many ways, each of these interpretations. Because the first name you do come across in all of this is Bartholomew Holshauser, and he is born in 1613. So this, if you've had the Orthodox and you've had effectively the Protestant interpretation, this, I guess, would be the Catholic interpretation. He sees the first age as the apostolic age, which begins with Jesus and lasts until the first persecutions. He sees the second as the era of persecutions, with the martyrs, which lasted from Nero to Constantine. The third age he sees as the era of illumination from Constantine to Charlemagne. The fourth era he sees as a period of peace in the Middle Ages, when church and society, this is to use his terminology, but when church and society gave rich fruit, beginning with Charlemagne up to the heresy of Luther, because again, we're seeing it from the other side to the Protestant Reformation. The fifth age he sees as a time of tribulation, which he identifies as the beginning with Protestantism. And when he's talking in 1603, he sees this as the era that they are in at that stage. He does give a definition for the last two ages. He sees the sixth age as being the age of consolation, which he sees as a period of growth and of returning to an easier time. And he sees the final age, the seventh age, as the age of desolation, when the church will face its final trials. So there are similarities between the three of them, and there are differences, and that differences, it goes back. And this is what bothered me in a way, because I don't necessarily have, when I'm looking at current affairs, I have a bullshit filter which kicks it out. When I'm looking at this, I don't have that same background knowledge. But from what we've already said today, I'm seeing now what you've got is you've got what may well be an interpretation, what may well be the intent, but is affected by the background of the person defining it, is affected by their denomination, by their religious belief. It's become religion over faith. But what each of them have tried to do, and I'm now going to nick Glenn's last slide, because what each of them have tried to do is fit the main characteristic of that church to a period in time. So the suffering church of Smyrna, they've seen as the global persecutions against the early church. The compromising church of Pergamum, they've seen as the tying together of church and state. They've seen the church becoming a part of the state. The dead church depends again on your interpretation. This is where religion takes over from faith, but they've seen it either as a result of the Reformation, or they've seen it as the challenges against, and then the trials of the last era, the trials, the end days, the end times. They've seen a church that's lukewarm and a church that's apathetic. So they've each, within their own box, within their own interpretation, they've tried to apply the characteristics of those seven churches to a period of time. And there are a lot of similarities as well as the differences.
Brilliant. You guys, I keep saying, are two of the best researchers I know. And you, with your background, Alex, being a chorister, being Church of England, that you would be able to pull those things. Okay, well. Now, however, with my explanation from Genesis of Cain and Abel, of faith be religion, yeah, let's look at the 7 ages slightly different. So let's say the first age, Ephesus, is exactly that. It's the apostolic age, you called it. It was an age where Christianity basically was interpreted by the local bishops, and it was all about simple things. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Wasn't complex. It's why Christianity spread and spread among the poor, especially. I mark the second age of the church, however, from the Constantinian conversion. Constantine, if you remember the history, Constantine, who was born in Scotland, actually, Antonine Mall, not far from the Vale, Alex. It's you can see it. If you've never done so, it's worth a trip to Hardgate, and that's where you'll find it, on the way to Clydebank. Now, he had a claim to become the next emperor, but so did a boy who was over in Africa. And there was a race. And the guy in Africa got to Rome before Constantine did. And worse for Constantine, Constantine had a smaller army. So then we have the story of the miracle when Constantine looks up to the sky and sees a fiery cross. Realizes that Christianity is real and has his soldiers paint a cross on their shields. The truth is, Constantine was a good politician, and he recognized the real politic. And the real politic at the time was that whilst they had, the Roman Empire tried to persecute the church and Christianity had grown, and the underground church in Rome was huge. So by making a public declaration of Christianity, what he did was he brought the ordinary people of Rome onto his side. And thus the ranks of his army swelled. He won the day, he became emperor. And what did he do for the rest of his rule? He spent the rest of his rule determining what Christianity was going to be. The Nicene Creed comes from the conference of the three conferences of Nicene, where basically at sword point, Constantine brought all the Christian heads, the bishops, from all these diverse places and dictated to them what Christianity was going to be. And the other thing to remember was overnight in Rome, all the pagan temples instantly became Christian churches without a change of staff. And everything that's ancient and pagan I can show to you in Catholicism as was dictated by Constantine. You get it? Constantine took faith and put it in a box. So that's the second age. The third age was the Holy Roman Empire, when aggressively they set out across the known world, which was the Roman Empire, to dictate all over, including the Celtic Church in Ireland, the Celtic Church in Scotland, to dictate that they must do things in a certain way. God in the box. Then we have the first schism, happened around 500 AD, when the Eastern Orthodox Church split away from the Holy Roman Empire because they disagreed over the infallibility of the Pope. Christian Eastern Orthodox, whilst they have patriarchs, do not think that the patriarch is the direct descendant of Peter. Do not think that that guy has infallibility because he's a channel straight to God, unlike the Catholic Church. The next stage was the Catholic rule and persecution. The Spanish Inquisition, remember that? Where the Catholic Church in the West, and this went right on, and it went right on even into American history, where the conquistadors from Spain, who wiped out the ancient civilizations of South America, right up to when the United States government started to expand to take over Indian territories, and then they put the Indians into Catholic schools to be taught how to be good Christians. Then we get the second schism, and that was the Lutheran Reformation. When Luther said, I don't think your box is quite the right shape. So now I'm going to suggest that the right shape of the box should be this. And the problem was, from the minute that Luther said, I've got an idea of how the box should look, the fragmentation of Christianity began, until we don't now have 57 varieties of Christianity. We have 1,057 varieties of Christianity, because out of the Protestant Reformation came the Church of Scotland, the Church of England. Then came the Baptists, the Reformists, the Calvinists, the fucking Free Church, the Pentecostals, and every variety that you can imagine, all saying, my box is the right box for God. And if you don't accept my box, then you're going to hell, God damn you. My brother-in-law was here yesterday, and he told me about the last funeral that he went to in the village. And unfortunately, this is so fucking apt of so many people who call themselves ministers of religion. He said the guy came in wearing his Batman cloak. Didn't know what to call it. It's an owl. It's really an academic robe. The academic robe that you wear when you graduate. But ministers like to fucking, the ones that like to dress that like to wear it. And he said he was head down until he got to the front of the church. And then he looked up and he threw his robes open and said, Jesus Christ is now among you. They try and put God into their box. God has a way of going, fuck you, I don't like that box, I'm bigger than that box, and you don't even understand the box. But do you get now? Do you get the difference? And why? When you pick up this weapon of mass destruction and you say, I know what God says, and therefore, if you don't accept my interpretation of what God says, you're a fucking heretic. You deserve to die, and I'm going to go to war against you. Whether that's the Catholics fucking killing 6 million wise women in the Middle Ages, or right now, today, how relevant can it be? Christian Zionists saying that everything that Israel does is right because the Bible says if you support Israel, you're on the right side of God, and if you don't, you're a fucking heretic and you deserve to be burned at the stake. And my God, we're coming after you. We're coming after you, calling you anti-Semitic. We're coming after you, saying there's a fucking about, anti-Jewish sentiment worldwide, and we're going to shut you up, and we're going to fucking jail you, and we're going to crush you because you ain't taking our God and our fucking box. Glenn, am I making sense to you?
More and more, my friend. More and more. Yeah, exactly. And that is the essence of heresy. The essence of heresy is disagreeing with someone else's view. And if you can gather enough people around you that share that view, you can go on a rampage and wipe out all these naysayers, all these heretics. And that is what we have seen throughout history over and over. Purges and inquisitions and persecutions and burnings and all of that. Yeah. So anything that doesn't fit into your particular idea of what God wants, what God says, is damned for all eternity, and you're doing God's work by wiping them out. Yeah, it just fits perfectly.
I should explain, by the way, just in case there's anyone who's slightly confused out there, that when I was a minister, I tried my best to channel two of the best ministers ever. The Reverend I Am Jolly. If you're not Scottish, you might not get that reference, but do look at Ricky Fulton. He was brilliant, Scotch and Rye. And Father Ted. and if you're, if you know that Irish, and often in the pulpit there'd be a glass of water, or in my case, vodka. Yeah. So it's all perfectly natural to me. Alex, am I making sense to you?
Yeah, you are. And on that theory, anything I don't know the answer to, I'm just going to say it's an ecumenical matter.
Exactly. It's so. But why is it the octopus in Revelation? As the old advert said, show me the beef. Where's the beef? Show me the beef. Well, I'm about to. We've talked before, haven't we, about the factions who all want the same thing. They all want a new world order. They just disagree as to how we get to it. Yeah. Starting to come into a little bit of focus now. And we get Albert Pike Slayer. Now, Albert Pike Slayer, we can look at that now and we can say, oh yeah, I can see that part of it. I can see this part of it. And therefore, this part of it is going to be right as well. Except Albert Pike was only one part of one faction. So whilst that faction's agenda went forward, other parts of it don't, because of the other factions interfering.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Glenn, does that make sense to you?
It does, yeah. You can see it. It's like government policy. It's like anybody's agenda. It never works out 100%. There's always opposition and people with different ideas that might work against you. And so you might get most of what you want, but you're never going to get all of what you want. And that's just the the truth. That's the political fact. So yeah, so it does make a lot of sense.
Alex, are you with me so far?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Likewise, then, when it comes to the Werner von Braun deathbed confessions, where he says to his assistant, there'll be terrorism, then there'll be communism, then there'll be asteroids, and finally will be the aliens. Remember that? And so, in this time period where we are in this timeline, everyone thinks that the next step is going to be Project Bluebeam, the fake alien invasion. Yes? That's what they're looking out for. That's what they think disclosure is. That's why they think David Wilcox and these scientists that we were discussing last week got ganked. Does that make sense? Except the factions are changing the agenda. And what is now coming out from the White House, from the administration, well, they're about to release information But what did they talk about at Bilderberg? What has Peter Thiel Palantir control? Been giving lectures on the Antichrist for? Why is J.D. Vance saying that actually aliens don't come from out there, they're interdimensional and they're demonic? Have you heard that being pushed? CERN, oh, it's open portals and the demons are coming through it, the pits of hell. It's Apollyon. It's Shiva. And thus, once more, here's the box that we want you to get into. And here's the agenda that we're going to take you down. When really, you're sheep to the slaughter. Because we're going to make you believe the events of the revelation are coming to pass. The demons are coming out of the pit. Oh, and you're ready for this one? There is no rapture in Scripture. Sorry for you folks that think you're going to get medevac out of there. But if people start to disappear, instead of being raptured to heaven, maybe they're going to their underground bases to survive the coming events because of incoming Nibiru and the pole shift and everything that's going to happen because of it. Oh, does that make sense, Glenn?
I was hoping you weren't going to ask me. Yeah, in a way, it's a kind of just a tangled web of deception and lies and truths and half-truths all mixed together in order to, well, I'll use, I think, I can't remember whose favorite word it was, Carl Sagan, I think, bamboozle you. People are bamboozled. You can make people pretty much conform to any belief that you want to do if you start supplying them with fake evidence. Look, we're going to tell you it's the aliens, but they're not aliens. They're really demons. And like you said, they're coming out of the pits of hell because we're in the end times. And unfortunately, most of you are going to die. But luckily, we have prepared arcs where the chosen will be able to ride out this great cataclysm and re-emerge into a new, bright, shining world where the new Jerusalem has come down from heaven, or whatever they want you to believe. So in a kind of twisted, contorted, and bucket of worms way, yes, it does. So, yeah.
Alex, I think it's time for that last slide that I sent you earlier. If you could bring it up and read it, please. Because we're about to go into the next phase of their operation. Read that, please, Alex.
Okay. During the Nuremberg trials, Hermann Göring gave an interview to psychologist Gustav Gilbert and said, "Of course the people don't want war. Why would some poor farmer want to risk his life in a war when the best he can hope for is to come back to his farm in one piece? Naturally, people don't want war. No one wants war in Russia, England, America, not even in Germany. That's obvious. But in the end, it's the leaders of a country who determine policy. And it's always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it's a democracy, a communist state, a parliament, or a fascist dictatorship. Gilbert objected. But there is one difference in a democracy. The people have a voice through their elected representatives. To which Goring replied, that's all well and good, but whether the people have a voice or not, they can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism and for exposing the country to danger. It works the same in any country. Nuremberg Diary, April the 18th, 1946. Doesn't it sound familiar?
Well, doesn't it, Alex?
It does, very much so.
You can take this slide away, mate. Democracy gets us Donald Trump, Keir Starmer, Macaroni, Albanese, Justin Trudeau, and now the other clip. Do you get that? What the SNP? God fucking help us. We're coming up for elections. Once again, I make my plea. If you feel that you really must walk into a ballot box, and I'm not going to, I'm not even fucking registered to vote. But if you feel you must walk into a ballot box, right across your entire fucking ballot, none of these people represent me and make their fake fucking selections in ballot. And if enough of us did that, it might make a difference. But we're too late. The die is cast. Wednesday, I told you, it's a big war and we're all in it. Everything that I've warned is about to come to pass. And I ain't John the fucking evangelist. I ain't claiming to be anything except the lone gunman, maybe the last Jacobite. Thoughts, Alex?
They don't need truth behind them. They just need to make you think what they want you to. They just need to bring you inside their little box, whether that box is religious, or whether that box is ideological, or whether it's political. They just need to teach you, first and foremost, to hate the other. And that's what they do over and over again. The moment that's Russia, the moment that's Iran. If that fails, that'll be somebody else. But all they have to do is teach you to hate. And they are well on their way in many cases.
Your thoughts, Glenn?
Similar along the lines to what Alex just said. We're always taught to hate the other. That there's always the other. They are the problem. They are the ones causing all. And it was the same in pre-war Germany that I talked about on Friday. It was the other. It's never the fault of those that, you know, that stand there pointing the finger. It's their fault. It's their fault. And if only we got rid of these people. We need to go to war with these people. We need to exterminate these people. We need to bomb them back to the Stone Age because it's their fault. They're the problem in this world. Now, we haven't got elections coming up in my town because it's entirely controlled by Labour, and they've decided they're not going to have any. So, if there were elections that I could vote in, I'm very much torn between writing Ayatollah Khomeini or Vladimir Putin again, or just none of the above. But it's going to be one of those three, I'll tell you next time I vote, because you might as well vote for the other, because it's the other that doesn't seem to want war. It's the other that have bent over backwards to try and go along for years and years and years. Look at the Iranian nuclear program, the most heavily policed, heavily inspected, heavily scrutinized nuclear program of any country on earth ever. And then, it doesn't matter about the fact that they haven't got the nuclear program. They have the ambition. So we're going to go to war over an ambition that they might or might not possess. It's fucking lunacy, absolute lunacy. But it's exactly the same. Attitude that we've had to Russia. Russia, as far as our establishment concerned, never exited the Soviet Union. They're rampant colonialists wanting to stride across Europe, make us all speak Russian and eat borscht. I've run out of words. I've run out of words for the lunacy that we're told to believe by our fucking mainstream media, by the newspapers, by our politicians, by all the idiots who are dragging us towards a war, who actually seem to be salivating for that war. And it's annoyed Ian so much that he's no longer with us. So,
I think everything it was his turn to be kicked off. We've all been kicked off.
Yeah, we've all been kicked off.
Or had to go off to try and fix it at one point today. So
yeah, I don't care, because just like you the other night, Alex, you had about 5 attempts to try and get a message that you wanted out, and you did in the end. Try again. Just keep going, and it doesn't really matter to me that we have a small audience. We're not on the scale of these massive mega churches that have been set up by some personalities, but we do have a message, and Ian is able to encapsulate that very well, and what he's done again today is to put together. I mean, we started with Revelations and we've ended up with Goebbels. So, but the message throughout that is the same. And the way that Ian was trying to explain, it's about putting people into neat little boxes, and the way that we try to do that with God, and to try and engineer everything to suit a certain agenda, be it this agenda or that. And I think he's did that very well today. I think this has been a very good show. It's hard to encapsulate big issues. It's hard to put everything into a context that is easily understandable. But I think what Ian's done today is to do that very well.
Yeah. If you can put people in enough little boxes, if you can divide them enough, if you can make them hate every other little box there are, then you can cause that divide, and you can keep causing it over and over.
I think, and not only that, you need to convince people that the people in that other box, well, they hate you. And they really want your box. They think your box is much nicer than theirs, and they would like to turn your box into a bigger version of their box. They'd like to annex your box so that we all live in one big box. But it won't be under your rules, because they're barbarians and they hate you. Sorry, it's nice to see you back, Ian.
Oh, well, for a while anyway.
The trials and tribulations of Sunday afternoon. never ceases to amaze me. You can go the whole week with never a blip, hardly a thing, and then Sunday, boom. Welcome back.
I hope you can hear me. Oh my God, they really didn't like that.
No.
They really don't like the fact that I am leading people closer and closer to the truths that they don't want revealed. Politicians are puppets. Billionaires and Rothschilds and royalty are bigger marionettes. The hidden hand is an ancient AI discovered by the Nazis in the 30s. That's who gave them help, not aliens. That's who's been bringing us down the timeline to this point. Alice. Who the fuck is Alice? Come after me then. I'm ready. So, guys, Glenn, I know you've got family commitments. I'm going to enjoy what's left of this glorious afternoon. Alex, I don't know what the weather's like there, but
Not bad.
hopefully you've got things this afternoon as well. People, I keep telling you, to quote from the Revelation, the time is short. We're here for a good time, not a long time, and all this has happened before, and all this will happen again. In the meantime, the best any of us can do is enjoy life to the best of your ability. Love those who are close to you. Let the other fuckers flow to the past. Final thoughts for the audience then. We'll start with you, Alex. Final thoughts for the audience. Plug tonight, when I know you have the other queer, not the queer, coming on.
Yeah, we will be back tonight at 8 p.m. with Last Jacobites International. And as Ian just said, we'll have Kia back on tonight. Other than that, what more can we say other than don't let them lead you into hate? Enjoy your life. Make the most of every day. And try. I'm not very good at it, but try and be nice to people. Try. And not get distracted and don't find it so easy to hate. So be what you need to be, do what you need to do, and we'll see you again tonight.
Who does think they'd have interfered so much with what is ostensibly a Bible study? Any last thoughts, Glenn?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave the audience with the words of the greatest religion that has ever emerged on the face of this earth, which is Bill and Tedism. And Bill and Tedism has only one doctrine: be excellent to each other. And that is what I'm going to do this afternoon. I'm going to go out and I'm going to be excellent to my friends and family, and probably buy them a lot of drinks, because what's the point of having money if you can't share it around, if you can't enjoy yourself? Store up not treasures on earth, but make other people happy. And I think that is our purpose here on earth, is to find a way through. And sometimes that actually involves maybe what some people would think of as not being quite so nice. And that is telling people the truth. Because the truth doesn't always sit well with everyone. But while ever there's breath in my body, while ever there's breath in Alex's body, and especially while there's breath in Ian's body, we will all continue to come on here and try to tell you the truth as best we can. So be excellent to each other, and I will see you again next week.
There's a queue a mile long for comforting lives.
Yeah.
But narrow is the way for inconvenient truth.
Mm.
And sometimes, as you say, Glenn, you do have to tell people to fuck it off. So, we're here for a good time, not a long time. We'll be back Tuesday night with Alex, the Green in the North. Wednesday with a Smoke 'em if you've got 'em. Friday with a Man in Black. Tonight with the International. And we'll do it all again. But for now, do me one little favour. Over yonder, before you miss fuck off too. And when you get there, fuck off a bit more and then keep fucking off until we meet again. Fuck me off. End the broadcast, please, Alex.
Yep.